It was late, and the cool night air had a strange quietness to it. I had just finished my work for the day and was sitting by the window in my small countryside house, trying to relax. My eyes wandered to the garden outside, lit faintly by the moon. I had always liked the peacefulness of the night here. There was something comforting about the silence, the kind of quiet that let you hear the wind rustling the leaves and the distant chirping of crickets. But tonight, something felt off. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, the kind of thing that plays tricks on you when you're too tired. A soft flickering light appeared at the far edge of my garden. It wasn't like any light I had seen before. It wasn't from the streetlights or my house, and it moved in strange ways, almost as if it were alive. I blinked, trying to clear my mind, but the light was still there, dancing softly in the shadows. I leaned forward, squinting to get a better look, but as I did, I heard it. A voice, a whisper, at first barely audible, but it grew clearer the longer I listened. It was strange, not a language I recognized, but there was a softness to it that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The voice was calling to me. I froze. Was I dreaming? Maybe I had just been working too hard, and now my mind was playing tricks on me. I tried to shake it off, but the voice, soft and melodic, continued. It sounded almost like it was calling my name. "Mark," the voice whispered again, this time louder. "Mark, come to me." My heart raced. I stood up from my chair and moved cautiously toward the door. It was as if something was pulling me toward the garden, but my feet felt glued to the floor. My hand hovered over the door handle, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Was someone out there? Maybe it was a prank, but the voice, there was something about it that didn't feel like a joke. It was too urgent, too desperate. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my skin as I walked toward the garden. The light was still flickering in the distance, casting strange shadows across the ground. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, but curiosity got the better of me. I had to see what was causing this. I stepped closer, each footfall crunching softly against the gravel path. As I neared the light, I saw it. There, standing in the middle of my garden, was a figure, a woman. At least she looked like a woman, but there was something off about her. She was tall, and her skin shimmered in the moonlight, changing colors like the northern lights. Her eyes, glowing softly, were fixed on me, and her presence made the world feel smaller, like everything around us had faded into the background. She spoke again, this time in a language I couldn't understand, but it wasn't the voice from before. It was her, the woman. She had been calling me, but now that she was standing right in front of me, I could barely move, as if her gaze had paralyzed me. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. She stepped closer, her movements graceful and fluid, almost like she was floating. Her voice, when she spoke this time, was clear and calm. "I have been waiting for you," she said, her voice both soothing and unsettling. "You are the one who can help me." I took a step back, confusion flooding my mind. What do you mean? Who are you?" I managed to stammer. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a smile I had seen before. There was sadness in it, and something deeper, something ancient. "I am Lyra," she said, "and I have come from far beyond the stars. I've been calling to you for days, trying to make you hear. I need your help." Her words didn't make sense, but there was a strange feeling in my chest. Her presence was overwhelming, almost like I knew her from somewhere, even though I was sure I had never seen her before. I wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but something inside me told me that time was running out. "I don't understand," I said, still backing away slowly. "Help with what?" Lyra's expression softened. "I am stranded," she said. "My ship has crashed, and I need to send a message to my people. But the others, they are hunting me. They will stop at nothing to keep me from delivering the warning." I could barely process her words. A ship. People from the stars. It sounded insane. But the way she looked at me, the urgency in her voice, told me she was not lying. She wasn't some prank or trick. She was real. And whatever she was saying, it wasn't just a story. "I don't know how I can help you," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm just a normal guy. Why would you think I can do anything?" Her eyes softened, and she took a step closer. "Because you are the one who can. You have something they didn't expect. You can change everything, Mark. But we don't have much time." She was right. The air around us suddenly felt thick with tension, like the world was holding its breath. There was something wrong, something I couldn't explain. I knew in that moment that my life was about to change forever. But what choice did I have? I couldn't turn back now. "Please," she said, her voice almost pleading. "Help me." The voice from the garden wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a call to something greater, something that I could no longer ignore. I stood there, staring at the woman in front of me, trying to process everything she had just said. Lyra. Her name echoed in my mind, but it didn't make any sense. A woman from the stars, stranded on Earth. The whole thing felt impossible. I glanced around the garden, half expecting someone to jump out and laugh at me, but the silence was deafening. There was no one else, no hidden cameras, no pranks. Just her, Lyra. Her eyes were still locked on mine, glowing faintly in the dim light. They weren't like normal human eyes. They were deeper, almost otherworldly, and they seemed to pierce right through me. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let myself get pulled into something that might be dangerous. But something in the way she looked at me made me hesitate. She wasn't threatening. In fact, it almost felt like she was pleading. "You don't understand," she said softly, stepping closer to me. "I have nowhere else to go. I've been trying to reach my people, but they won't listen. They think I'm lost. But I'm not. I'm here for a reason." I shook my head, still unsure of what to make of all this. "But why me? Why did you come here? Why call me every night?" Lyra's gaze softened, and she stepped even closer, her presence almost overwhelming. "Because you're the one who can help. You're the one who can stop them." I couldn't help but feel a strange pull in my chest, a tug that urged me to trust her. I didn't know how or why, but something inside me knew she wasn't lying. Despite the disbelief and confusion swirling in my head, there was a part of me that understood. Maybe because of how desperate she seemed, or maybe because of the urgency in her voice. I didn't know. "Stop who?" I asked, voice trembling a little. "Who's coming after you? And why me?" Lyra paused, her expression becoming more serious. "The people who hunt me, they're not human. They're from my world, but they're nothing like me. They're part of a military force, a group that controls everything. They think I betrayed them, but I didn't. I came to Earth to warn your people about something terrible. They're planning something. A takeover." My mind raced with her words. Aliens from her world. Her own people, hunting her down. A takeover. It sounded insane, but there was something about the way she spoke, the sincerity in her voice, that made me believe her. This wasn't just some wild story. "And what exactly are they planning to do?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Lyra's eyes grew darker. "They want to enslave your planet, to take it for themselves. Earth is a gold mine, a resource they can exploit. But there's more. There's technology here, hidden away, that could change everything. If they get their hands on it, they'll have control over the entire galaxy." I felt a chill run down my spine. A galaxy-wide takeover. It was too much to take in, but the seriousness of her words kept me rooted to the spot. "So, what do I have to do with any of this?" I asked. "I'm just a regular guy." Lyra stepped closer, her voice softer now. "You don't understand yet, Mark, but you have a connection to the technology they're after. They believe you're the key to unlocking it. And if they find you before I can stop them, they will use you to get what they need." I felt a knot form in my stomach. The fear in her eyes was real, and it was starting to sink in. If what she was saying was true, If there really was some kind of technology hidden on Earth, something that could give these aliens power over the entire galaxy, then it was bigger than I ever could have imagined. I never thought I'd be involved in something like this. I was just a normal guy living a quiet life. Now, I was at the center of something far beyond my understanding. But it wasn't just the idea of a galactic war that scared me. It was the fact that Lyra was trusting me with all of this. A stranger. Someone she barely knew. Why me? What made me special? Why me? I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. Her eyes softened with something like regret, but there was also determination. Because of who you are. You're different. I can't explain it all yet, but you've got a part to play in this, Mark. You're stronger than you realize. You're more than just some ordinary man. And you can help me. We can stop them. I didn't know what to say to that. How could I be anything more than what I was? But the way she looked at me, like I was the only person who could help, made me feel like I couldn't back down now. I had to help her. I didn't know how, but I had to. Just then, there was a sudden noise, an unmistakable sound that made my blood run cold. It was the hum of an engine, but not from any car I'd ever heard. It was too smooth, too unnatural. My eyes darted around, and in the distance, I saw a faint, glowing light in the sky. Something was coming. Something big. Lyra's face grew pale, and she grabbed my arm. "They found me," she said, urgency flooding her voice. "They're here. We don't have much time." The fear in her eyes was enough to make my heart race. Without thinking, I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the house. My mind was spinning with 1,000 questions, but right now I had no time for answers, only action. As the light grew brighter in the sky, I knew one thing for sure. My life had just changed forever. And somehow I was about to be thrust into a war I wasn't prepared for, but I had no choice but to fight. We rushed through the garden, Lyra gripping my arm tightly as she pulled me toward the house. My heart was pounding in my chest, the sound of her footsteps barely audible over the growing hum in the air. The strange, glowing light in the sky was getting closer, and with it, the unmistakable sense of danger that seemed to hang in the air like an invisible storm. "Who are they?" I asked, trying to catch my breath as we neared the door. "Who's coming for you?" Lyra's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "They're from my world, my people. They've been hunting me since I arrived here, but they don't know everything. Not yet. They don't know what I found." We reached the door, and I quickly swung it open, pulling her inside. The house was quiet, but the air felt tense, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I glanced back outside, half expecting to see some kind of alien ship descending from the sky. But all I saw was the strange light, flickering faintly in the distance. Whatever it wasn't close enough to be seen clearly yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I turned to Lyra, my mind racing. "What did you find? What's so important that they're willing to kill you over it?" She took a deep breath and looked around the room, as if trying to gather her thoughts. "It's not just technology. It's something far more dangerous, something they don't want anyone to have." I didn't want to believe it at first, but now I know the truth. I waited, my pulse quickening. The truth about what? Lyra looked at me, her eyes full of an emotion I couldn't quite place, something like guilt mixed with determination. The truth about why they're trying to destroy Earth. They've known for years, Mark. This planet isn't just a resource for them. It's the key to something much larger. The galaxy's fate is tied to Earth, and they'll do whatever it takes to control it. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. The idea of Earth being at the center of something so much bigger, something so dangerous, it didn't make sense. This was just Earth, right? Just a small, relatively unimportant planet in the grand scheme of things. But Lyra's eyes never wavered, and I could see that she believed every word. How? How is Earth connected to the galaxy's fate? Lyra exhaled slowly, looking down at her hands. It's the technology hidden here, not just on Earth, but buried deep in its history. Your ancestors had it. Your world was once much more advanced than you realize. But something happened, and it was hidden, forgotten, lost. They think they can control it, use it to turn the tide of the entire galaxy in their favor. They think if they have the key to unlocking it, they'll be unstoppable. My mind reeled at her words. Earth wasn't just some insignificant dot in the universe. It was the key to the galaxy's survival, and these aliens were willing to destroy everything in their path to take control of it. The weight of that revelation hit me like a freight train. But why haven't they found it yet? I asked, trying to make sense of it all. If it's so important, why haven't they come for it sooner? Lyra's expression grew even more serious, and she took a step closer to me. Because they didn't know where to look. They didn't realize that it was right under their noses all along. They didn't know it was tied to humanity. Until I found the connection. I swallowed hard. So what happens if they find this technology? What will they do with it? Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper, her eyes filled with fear. They'll use it to control everything. The galaxy, the entire universe. They're already so powerful. Imagine what they could do with this. If they unlock its full potential, no one will be able to stop them. They'll reign supreme, and Earth will be nothing more than a distant memory. A shiver ran down my spine as I thought about the implications. I had always thought Earth was just a tiny part of the vast universe, but now it seemed like it was the most important planet in existence. And these aliens, with their advanced technology and ruthless ambition, were about to bring everything crashing down if we didn't stop them. So, what now? I asked, my voice low. What do we do? Lyra looked at me, her gaze steady despite the fear that still lingered in her eyes. Now we fight. We have to stop them before they can unlock the secrets of this technology. We have to find it first, and we have to protect it. If they get their hands on it, it's over for everyone. I nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't some kind of hero. But if what she said was true, if Earth really was the key to everything, then it wasn't just my life at stake. It was everyone's. The sound of the strange engine hum grew louder, and Lyra's eyes snapped to the window. I could hear it too now. Something heavy in the air. Something ominous. My heart raced in my chest, and I felt my palms grow sweaty. They're close, she whispered urgently. We don't have much time. We need to leave now. Without thinking, I grabbed her hand and led her to the back of the house, out into the small woods behind the yard. My mind was spinning, trying to process everything she had just told me. But there was no time for questions, no time for hesitation. This was real. And if we didn't act now, everything we knew could be lost. As we ran through the trees, the sound of the engines grew closer, louder, while the night was tense. Lyra and I had barely made it to the edge of the woods behind my house when the first burst of bright light lit up the sky. The strange humming sound, now deafening, filled the air, and I instinctively pulled Lyra closer to me, my heart hammering in my chest. The enemy was near. We darted through the trees, but there was no escaping the inevitable. It felt like the world was closing in on us. There was no place to hide. The aliens were coming for us. The air was thick with an unsettling tension, the kind that made every sound seem louder than it really was. The distant hum was joined by the low thrumming of advanced engines, a sound I knew all too well by now. We weren't going to outrun them. Lyra's grip on my arm tightened, and I could see the panic in her eyes. They're here, she whispered, barely audible over the noise. We need to fight. I didn't know how. I wasn't a soldier. I was just a man with no real experience in battle, no training to fight enemies from another world. But as Lyra looked at me, her face set with determination, I knew she was right. If we didn't act now, we were done for. From behind us, the ground shook. The first of the alien ships appeared, low in the sky, their sleek shapes cutting through the air like predators. The lights on the ships flashed bright against the dark sky, casting long shadows on the ground below. They were here, and they weren't wasting any time. My eyes scanned the area, searching for any sign of hope, anything that could give us a fighting chance. Then I remembered. My garden. It was the only thing I could think of to turn the tide in our favor. The large tool shed at the back, the one I had been meaning to clean out, could be our salvation. The tools stored inside were my only option. They might not be advanced enough to stop aliens with weapons far beyond anything we had, but I had to try. I grabbed Lyra's hand and led her toward the shed. As we ran, the first of the alien forces dropped from their ships, their boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. I could hear them communicating in an alien language, a sound that sent a chill through my spine. They were hunting us, and I could hear the confidence in their voices, as though our defeat was inevitable. We reached the shed, and I fumbled with the door, my hands shaking from adrenaline. Inside, the old tools were piled up, rusty and unused. But one thing caught my eye, a large metal pipe, just the right size to swing at an opponent. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I grabbed it, and Lyra took a deep breath, nodding at me in approval. "That'll work," she said. I didn't know what else to do, so we moved back toward the garden, my mind racing. The aliens were closing in, and every instinct I had screamed that we had to stop them now. There was no other option. The first alien soldier appeared in front of us, its face hidden behind a sleek metallic mask. It raised its weapon, a sleek energy rifle that hummed with power, and aimed directly at me. My heart skipped a beat, but before it could fire, Lyra lunged forward. She knocked the weapon from the alien's hands with a swift, powerful strike, her movements as graceful as they were deadly. I hadn't realized just how skilled she was until that moment. She moved with the confidence of someone who had trained her entire life for this. I swung the metal pipe at the alien soldier's legs, hitting him hard enough to knock him off balance. He stumbled, falling to the ground with a loud crash. Lyra was already on him, pinning him down with her bare hands. The alien struggled beneath her, but Lyra's grip was unbreakable. Within moments, she had incapacitated him, rendering him helpless. "We have to keep moving," Lyra said, her voice sharp and urgent. She grabbed my arm, pulling me back into the garden just as the rest of the enemy forces began to swarm the area. The sound of their boots pounding the ground grew louder, and I could see their glowing weapons lighting up the night. They were coming for us. I felt a surge of fear and adrenaline. We were outnumbered, outmatched, and outgunned, but we couldn't back down. Not now. "Stay close," Lyra warned, her eyes scanning the horizon. "They'll be coming from every direction. We need to use the garden to our advantage." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. The garden, once a place of peace and quiet, had become our battleground. The flower beds, the trees, and the hedges all provided cover, but they wouldn't hold up against the firepower of the alien soldiers for long. I raised the metal pipe again, ready to fight, but Lyra's hand stopped me. She looked at me with a fierce determination. "We can't do this alone. We need to find the others." I knew she was right. The aliens had numbers on their side, and there was no way we could defeat them, just the two of us. But before I could respond, the ground shook again, and a massive explosion rocked the air. The shockwave sent us both tumbling to the ground, the force of it knocking the breath out of me. I scrambled to my feet, coughing and gasping for air. The explosion had come from the direction of the alien ships. Someone had just made their move. We looked at each other, confusion in our eyes. The garden had gone quiet, the sounds of battle momentarily silenced by the blast. But it wouldn't last. The enemy would regroup, and they would come for us again, stronger than before. In the distance, I saw a figure emerging from the smoke, a human figure. My heart leaped. Were we finally getting help? Lyra looked at me, her eyes full of hope. "It's time," she said. We can win this. The figure emerging from the smoke was like a lifeline, a moment of hope in a situation that had been spiraling out of control. As the smoke cleared, I could see him clearly. A human soldier, his armor battered and worn, his face set with determination. He wasn't alone. There were others behind him, a small group of rebels, humans who had been fighting the alien invaders for months. I felt a rush of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of urgency. The battle wasn't over. The alien forces were regrouping, their movements methodical and relentless. We had only moments to act before they launched another full assault. The soldier's eyes met mine, and he gave a slight nod, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. "Get to the back gate," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We'll cover you." Without waiting for a response, he signaled for his team to move forward, positioning themselves between us and the oncoming alien soldiers. Lyra grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the gate, her face set in a grim expression. There was no time for hesitation. If we didn't move quickly, we wouldn't make it out alive. As we dashed through the garden, I could hear the sounds of weapons fire erupting behind us. The aliens were closing in fast, their heavy boots thudding on the ground like an army marching to war. But the rebels were holding their ground, firing back with deadly precision. Each shot they fired seemed to send an alien soldier sprawling to the ground, but it was clear that they were outnumbered. We reached the back gate, my heart pounding in my chest. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers trembling as I struggled to open it. Lyra was already looking back, her eyes scanning the horizon, waiting for any sign of movement. I finally got the gate open, and we slipped through, running into the dense woods beyond. We didn't stop running until we were deep in the forest, far away from the battle. The sounds of gunfire had faded, but the tension still hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I stopped to catch my breath, my mind racing. We had escaped, but at what cost? The alien forces were relentless, and I knew they wouldn't stop until they had hunted us down. Lyra didn't stop either. She kept walking, her eyes scanning the forest around us. She was always alert, always ready for the next fight. But even she couldn't hide the exhaustion in her posture. The past few days had been a blur of fighting, running, and barely surviving. We needed to regroup, to rest, but there was no time for that. The alien threat was far from over. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice hoarse from the running and the adrenaline. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She paused for a moment, looking up at the dark sky above us. The stars were barely visible through the thick canopy of trees, but she seemed to find something in the distance that gave her direction. "There's a safe house," she said quietly. "A place where we can rest, gather our strength. We have to keep moving." I nodded, though I didn't fully understand. The chaos of the past few hours had left me disoriented. But if Lyra believed it was the best option, I trusted her. I had to. We continued to move through the forest, the path narrowing as we went deeper into the wilderness. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig felt like a threat. I was on edge, my senses heightened, but it was the silence that worried me most. There were no signs of the alien soldiers following us, but the air felt thick with danger. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a small clearing. A cabin stood in the center, half hidden by the surrounding trees. It looked abandoned, but something about it felt right. This was the safe house Lyra had mentioned. She pushed open the door, and we stepped inside, the sound of the forest fading behind us. It was quiet inside. The air smelled musty, and the floor creaked under our weight, but it was safe, at least for the moment. "We'll rest here for a while," Lyra said, closing the door behind us. "But we can't stay too long." I nodded, but I could tell something was bothering her. She moved around the cabin, her eyes constantly scanning the room, checking for any signs of danger. It was as if she could sense something I couldn't. A deep unease settled over me. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping closer. Lyra looked at me, her eyes dark with worry. "I'm not sure. It's just..." Something feels off. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Suddenly, I wasn't so sure we were alone in the cabin. The silence felt heavy now, like the calm before a storm. And then it came. A loud crash from outside shattered the stillness. We both spun around, rushing to the window. The trees were moving, and shadows flitted between them. It was the aliens. They had found us. Lyra grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the window. "Get ready," she said. "This is it. They've come for us." We had no more time to run. The ultimate test was here, and it was time to face the enemy head-on. There was no escape now. The fight for survival had become a battle for everything. The alien forces were relentless, but we had one thing they didn't: our will to survive. As the first alien soldiers breached the clearing, Lyra raised her weapon, and I did the same. We were ready. Ready to fight. Ready to win. Whatever it took. The sound of the approaching alien forces echoed through the forest, like a distant rumble of thunder. I could feel my heart racing in my chest as I tightened my grip on the weapon. This was it. There was no more running. No more hiding. It was time for the final stand. Lyra moved swiftly across the cabin, her eyes locked on the door, ready to defend our last refuge. Her expression was hard, but I could see the fatigue behind her eyes. We had been through so much, yet the worst was still to come. The alien forces had found us, and they were coming for us with everything they had. This wouldn't be like the battles before. This would be a fight to the death. "We hold them here," Lyra said, her voice calm, but I could hear the tension underneath. "We don't let them take us without a fight." I nodded, my mind racing. The cabin wasn't much of a fortress, but it was all we had. We had to make it work. I glanced out the window again, scanning the forest for any sign of movement. The alien soldiers were closing in, their distorted forms shifting through the trees like phantoms, moving with a precision that sent a chill down my spine. They knew what they were doing. They knew how to hunt. "We need a plan," I said, my voice low as I turned to Lyra. "We can't take them all on directly. We have to outsmart them." She looked at me, her eyes hard but thoughtful. "You're right. We'll need to use the terrain to our advantage. There are traps in the forest. If we can lure them in, we might stand a chance." My pulse quickened at the thought. We weren't just going to fight them. We were going to make them walk right into our trap. The cabin might be small, but the surrounding forest was dense, and we could use it to our advantage. "We'll need to move quickly," Lyra continued. "I'll take the east side, you cover the west. We'll create distractions, and when they're distracted, we hit them hard." I could feel the weight of the responsibility settle on my shoulders. This was our chance. If we failed, we would be nothing more than another casualty in the war between humans and aliens. But if we succeeded, we could survive. And maybe, just maybe, we could turn the tide of this war. The crash of the first alien soldier breaking through the tree line jolted me out of my thoughts. The battle had begun. I moved quickly, ducking low as I made my way to the west side of the cabin. I could hear the alien soldiers, their unnatural footsteps almost drowned out by the sound of the wind in the trees. My hand was steady as I set up the first trap, a hidden pit lined with sharp, jagged rocks at the bottom. If they weren't careful, they'd fall right into it. I held my breath, waiting for the first soldier to cross my path. Then there was a rustle from the east side. Lyra had already made her move. The sound of a distant explosion echoed through the forest, and I knew it was time. I triggered the first distraction, sending a burst of bright light and noise into the air, disorienting the aliens. They would be momentarily distracted, and that was when we would strike. The first alien soldier walked right into my trap. He didn't even see the pit until it was too late. With a loud scream, he fell into the hole, disappearing from view. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I moved quickly, my heart pounding in my chest as I set up more traps, my mind focused on the battle at hand. Lyra was on the move too. I could hear her weapons fire. a series of loud blasts that reverberated through the forest. She was holding her own, but I knew she couldn't keep up the fight alone. We needed to stick together. I rushed toward her, my mind racing as I planned our next move. When I reached her position, she was already engaged in a fierce firefight with 2 alien soldiers. Their weapons were more advanced than ours, but the element of surprise was on our side. Lyra moved with a precision and speed that left the aliens struggling to keep up. She was a warrior in every sense of the word. I jumped into the fray, taking down one of the soldiers with a well-aimed shot. The second alien was faster, but I managed to catch him off guard with a quick distraction. We worked as a team, our movements synchronized, as we dispatched the remaining alien forces one by one. But even as we fought, I could feel the odds shifting against us. For every soldier we took down, 2 more seemed to take their place. It was clear that this wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a battle for the future of humanity. The alien forces were relentless. They would stop at nothing to wipe us out. But as long as we were alive, as long as we fought, we still had a chance. I could see Lyra beginning to tire, her movements slowing, her breathing labored. But she refused to stop. She pushed forward, firing again and again, refusing to give in. I couldn't let her fight alone. I stepped in, covering her back as we took down the last wave of aliens that had come for us. The smoke of battle hung heavy in the air, and the forest around us was silent once more. We had won. We had survived. But at what cost? I looked at Lyra, her face covered in dirt and sweat, her eyes wide with exhaustion. We had done it. We had stood our ground, and we had won. But there was no time to rest. The battle wasn't over yet. The war had only just begun. I turned to her, my voice steady but urgent. We can't stop here. We need to keep moving. They'll be back. Lyra nodded, a grim determination in her eyes. Then let's move. Together. And so we did. We walked into the unknown, knowing that the final stand we had made today was only the beginning of a much larger fight. But as long as we fought together, we knew we could face whatever came next. Together, we would win. Together, we would survive.